Welcome to LSB Feaster's Radio Aircheck and Classic TV channel.
Welcome back. It's Jerry Williams with Roger Ebert. He of Siskel and Ebert. They're now going to be on at a new time on Channel 4. This BZTV. And that'll be 10:30 on Sunday mornings. Am I right, Roger?
10:30 on Sunday mornings, our new time, right.
All right. There's something amiss with a book that you did not mention.
Oh, Patty Chang Anker is probably listening to your show, along with your millions of other listeners. She's the publicist for Norton, which published my hardback anthology last year called Roger Ebert's Book of Film, and that's a real big, ambitious project. There are 114 different articles in it by 112 different authors on the subject of movies over the last century. It's a great bedside book or a book to take on a cruise, something like that. So I have three books. Roger Ebert's Book of Film, Roger Ebert's Video Companion 1998 edition, which consists of 1,500 full-length reviews of recent important movies on video. And then the other one, which you hold in your hand, is Questions for the Movie Answer Man, and that's based on a column I write where people send me questions and I try to answer them. Very strange questions sometimes. Not easy questions, like what was Doris Day's real name, but real hard questions. What was
her real name, anyway?
No, I think it was Klingelhoff, wasn't it? Or
something like that, anyway.
Yeah.
How important is the television program?
It's very important. I really enjoy doing it. As you know, we started out in Chicago doing it monthly for the PBS station, and it has grown now and to the point where we've been on the air for 22 years. We're in 200 markets, and we're in our 12th year with...
Well, the program itself is successful, but how important is it in the industry?
Oh. I don't know. Some people have said that we have too much power, and my response to that has always been that we don't have enough power, because I think that we do a pretty good job of giving people guidance on what might be worth their time and what might not be. And if you spend $30 or $40 million on an advertising and marketing campaign for a movie, what power do all the movie critics in the country together have against that? I'll give you an example. Last weekend, Flubber, starring Robin Williams, grossed $37 million.
You hated it.
Well, not only did I hate it, I don't believe there was a critic in the country, not one movie reviewer in the United States of America, like that movie at all. And now I'm getting all kinds of email and letters and telephone calls from people saying, well, we took our kids and we hated it. It's really a horrible movie. And I'm saying, well, why didn't you listen to us in the first place? Well, they got the cups at McDonald's and they saw the ads on TV. There was such a juggernaut for a movie like Flubber that the kids begin to feel like if they don't go to see it, they'll be ostracized in the third grade. They won't be able to go to school.
Well, they've got a great name and a great star that
yes.
kids would enjoy.
And Robin Williams is very, very good in a movie, incidentally, that's set here in Boston, that's coming out in 2 weeks called Good Will Hunting, where it stars, this young, why is his name leaving my mind? Matt Damon, this hot young actor, as a mathematical genius, who is an Irish kid from Boston who had never went to college. He's a janitor at MIT, and he solves mathematical equations on the blackboard at night when he comes into work. And it turns out that he's got one of the greatest minds in the world for math, but he has no desire to be a mathematician. And so you have a professor, played by Stellan Skarsgård, and a counselor, played by Robin Williams, who try to get this guy back on track again. And
you loved it.
It's a wonderful movie, and Robin Williams is terrific in it. But Robin Williams was not terrific in Flubber.
Well, you can't be right all the time, and I probably would never get to see Flubber. Even the coming attractions, so to speak, the previews, did not interest me, but I really like him.
Robin Williams can be very good, yes. He's very talented. I think he needs guidance sometimes.
Yeah.
Occasionally he leaves character in order to do a stand-up act, and that's distracting. But sometimes he gets a character that works with that approach, such as Good Morning Vietnam, where he's supposed to be a disc jockey who ad-libs on the radio, so then it works fine. Or his Genie in Aladdin. That was a very effective Even though it was a voice role, everybody always remembers that it was Robin Williams.
And is there some sort of a contest going on now to name the top 100 films in the country?
Yeah, the American Film Institute has a list of 400 films, and they're asking people to vote for 100 of them. It's kind of rigged, though. I would say it's very much establishment in terms of the list. First of all, no foreign films, no documentaries. And then they include every movie that ever, got an Academy Award nomination for Best Picture or made a lot of money. And so when you run down the list, you ask yourself things like, is Mrs. Miniver really one of the 100 greatest films of all time?
What about those great
400?
Those great sleeper films? Aren't they listed as?
It's a pretty good list of a pretty good selection. Films that you might have really loved but wonder if anybody else remembers, like The Year of Living Dangerously.
So if you were to pick one of the last 50 years, which would your most favorite movie be?
Well, I have to make it 55 years, and then I would say Citizen Kane.
Really?
I've got
it would be one of mine, and I pick a more contemporary film that I like because I'm in that business, the film called Network.
That was a good film. Yes, it was. Very good film. I have a project now that I'm doing for the Chicago Sun-Times, and it's syndicated, and it's also on the web, the World Wide Web, where every other week I go back into the past and look at an old movie and review it as if it were a new movie. It's called The Great Movies, because I feel that people have forgotten some of the great movies of 10, 20, 30, or 60 or 70 years ago.
I think what they do is they watch these on the classic movie channels, and they see it in black and white. And for a good many people under the age of 40, it's a turnoff.
I don't know. I think that there are people who actually prefer black and white, and when they're channel surfing, when they see something in black and white, they stop because it might...
I do.
Yeah. I prefer black and white if I had to choose, because I think it's more mysterious and dreamlike than color.
But at the same time, though, you know that situation comedies and the production of those situation comedies are done so that the outfits that all these young people wear are flashy, so that when you come across the dial with your clicker, you stop because it is colorful. And NBC, I think, did a survey on that about 10 years ago, indicating that a good many people stopped right there, even though there were 3 situation comedies rolling at the same time.
They went for that. Well, that's funny, because for comedy and for dance, black and white is better than color. Fred Astaire hated color movies. He really wanted to make only black and white movies, because then you had line and motion, and you weren't distracted by the color of Ginger Rogers' hair or her dress. And if you go back and look on TV, the old sitcoms that were shot in black and white, like I Love Lucy, the early days, The Honeymooners, those last, those hold up. And then when you get into the color stuff, it seems dated. The clothes seem more dated. The decor seems more dated. The black and white seems more timeless.
So you object to your good friend over there at C-SPAN, CNN, who is changing the color or colorizing films?
Ted Turner. I think he's kind of stopped doing that now. Do
you know him, by the way?
I've met him. I've met him.
You haven't told him that?
Oh, I've told him that.
And?
He said, I'm not going to do it anymore because I run out of pictures to colorize. And I didn't have the nerve to say, well, you never had the nerve to colorize The Grapes of Wrath, which, of course, was the great Henry Fonda performance. He owns that, and it's in black and white, and I don't think Jane would let him colorize
I don't suppose so, but that film...
Or, for that matter, My Darling Clementine, another great Henry Fonda performance.
Well, there is a way to color it so that it would have the same feeling. There are different...
No, I don't believe that. For one thing, they all, in order to these guys... Look at Yankee Doodle Dandy, for example, the black and white picture with Jimmy Cagney about George M. Cohan. They wore dark suits in those days. So in order to colorize it, you have to come up with some really weird color, like pink or lime or sky blue, to make it show up, so that suddenly all of these guys in these old colorized movies look like they're going out to play golf.
I know, but if it's Grapes of Wrath, and then you have low-key color, and it's done with good taste, and it's sort of brown or sepia color,
Yeah, well, why don't we colorize the Mona Lisa, too? Because I think that could use
Well, maybe she could use it. You just said so.
Some lipstick or something. I think that if it isn't broke, don't fix it. That's what I think. And these movies are classics in black and white, and there's nothing wrong with them.
And you're telling me that you had 20 films, was it, that was with both 2 thumbs up?
No, 4 films.
4? I thought you...
This coming Sunday on WBZ, we have reviews of 4 films, and they're all thumbs up. Titanic, Amistad, Good Will Hunting, and The Apostle.
I'm just trying to look at some of the...
This is great. After a long year, we're finally getting... You get the quality films in December, Jerry, because that's the beginning of the final stretch of the Academy Award season.
How did you feel about last year's Academy Awards?
I was pretty happy, by and large. I think they could have picked a better picture than English Patient for the big one. I felt the best picture last year was Fargo, but I was happy to see so many Oscars going to the independent nominees last year.
All right,
this year hasn't been the same way.
Give me short answers on some of the films that are out today. The Midnight Garden of Good and Evil.
Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, Clint Eastwood's picture, kind of disappointing, unfocused. Makes the mistake of telling the story through the John Cusack character, who was not an interesting character. Cusack's a good actor, but it was a disappointment, I think, to me and anybody else who read the book.
The Rainmaker.
A decent film, once again with Matt Damon, this guy who's in Good Will Hunting, and based on a Grisham novel, but instead of all being about the superhero, a wide variety of colorful supporting performances, especially Danny DeVito, who is terrific.
Alien, is it Resurrected?
Alien Resurrection. Sigourney Weaver and Winona Ryder.
I'm not sure I want to see that kind of film.
No, it was a disappointment to me. I think that the series has run out of gas. The first 2 were pretty good. This one is not really much better than the third one, which was pretty bad. You know, it's just a series of aliens jumping up and scaring you, and then being defeated somehow. It's the same formula as Starship Troopers, really. And what you have to ask is, if these aliens are really that deadly, how come they always lose?
I haven't thought about it, but I'll give it some further thought. What has happened to comedy? I mean, real comedy. Has it been usurped by television? Is that real comedy with a smart-ass remark from every kid who's on the block? I mean...
insult comedy.
Yeah, it's not even insult comedy, it's wisecrack
Well,
comedy.
The most influential comic figure of the last half of the 20th century was Don Rickles, because he invented the roast, and the roast is the inspiration for Roseanne and all of those other sitcoms. As far as movie comedy is concerned, I don't know. The funniest movie I've seen in the last 2 or 3 years was that Woody Harrelson bowling picture. What was the name of it? Wait, people are whispering. Kingpin. I like it.
Yeah.
Now, I heard from people who thought it was vulgar and disgusting, and I agree, it was vulgar, and it was disgusting, but it was very funny.
Did you see the most recent Woody Allen film?
Yes, I did. Deconstructing Harry. It's a good film.
Was that the name of the film?
It's the one that's coming out in...
Everyone Says I Love You.
Yeah, that was last year's. I'm actually...
That was last year.
I'm ahead of the curve. I've seen Deconstructing Harry, and it doesn't open until January.
Any good?
So, yeah, it is. But I thought that Everyone Says I Love You was the best of all. I mean, that was... I think that's up there with Annie Hall.
You know what happened?
That's up with Annie Hall.
I'm sure you know what
movie.
happened with that film in theaters.
Died.
Do you know what it's doing in video?
Okay.
You can't find it. You can't find the film.
Because it's always rented.
Everybody has it out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really a very interesting film. First of all, it was done partially in New York and I guess partially in Venice.
Paris and Venice, and it's a musical where real people sing in their real voices.
It's a marvelous film. I would call it.
I loved it.
One of the top 100 films of maybe the last 10 years.
Oh, it was charming.
Something like that, and the color.
Yeah.
The cinematography was such that you actually took notice of it, you say?
Well, the scene on the riverbank in Paris.
Oh, marvelous.
When he dances and then they take flight, where they use special effects for that magical effect. It's wonderful.
Take a short break and we'll come back with Roger Ebert. Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel will now be appearing at 10:30 in the morning Sunday on Channel 4. And this is Jerry Williams here on WRKO, the talk station, and we'll be back with more. We're back with Roger Ebert of Chicago. By the way, he writes for the Chicago Sun-Times. He's been writing for the Chicago Sun-Times over 25, 30 years now, I would think.
Yeah, it's on the web at suntimes.com.
Oh, is that where it is?
/Ebert. You can read my reviews.
And books everywhere. All you have to do is go down to the neighborhood public library or a good bookstore, and you'll ask for the Roger Ebert films, and I should say his critique on films and other oddities that are once again in the midst of the film world. And he's here with Gene Siskel. Gene and he lectured at the Harvard School of Law on an amazing subject. It was?
The people versus the movies. I don't know. I think it's the movies and the people versus us.
Speaking of the people versus, what was the best film you saw that dealt with Courtroom?
Courtroom, well, of course, Amistad is a very interesting film, and it takes place here in Boston. It's about a court case involving some slaves who rise up against their masters on a slave ship, and everything depends upon whether or not they have been brought from Africa or whether they were the sons and daughters of slaves. And John Quincy Adams, played by Anthony Hopkins, is one of their defenders. That's a good film. That's Steven Spielberg's Christmas release. That's a good one.
My favorite film is, I'm leaving it out, with Paul Newman.
The Verdict.
The Verdict.
Oh, that was a very good film.
That film I could see over and over again. Do you remember who the director is?
Sidney Lumet.
Yes. See, that's the kind of cinematography I was talking about. It's low-key.
Well, now, here are two films you've mentioned.
Yep.
The Verdict and Network, both directed by the same man.
That's right. I understand what he's doing.
And he made a picture recently called Critical Care that also ended in a courtroom. It was about a man who is on life support, and one of his daughters wants them to pull the plug, and the other wants them to keep him alive. And it turns out that it all hinges on a will. And James Spader plays the young doctor who gets caught between these two women, and it all winds up in court with really a wonderful comic performance by Albert Brooks as the old alcoholic doctor in charge of the hospital whose only concern is how much money they can wring out of the insurance company. So Lumet does good films on serious subjects.
Yeah, the fact is that not just because it happened to be in Boston, because when they use scenes in Boston, whether it was for a TV show or not, they never use the right building for the right thing.
Oh, they never do. They always, whenever they drive anywhere, they always drive in a way that you can't get there. Yeah, if you know anything about any city, you begin to notice that. Like in Chicago, gee, that's funny. They got from the lower level of Wacker Drive to northbound Lakeshore Drive with one turn. I wonder how they did that.
I think they were in the Verdict. They were filming the State House and indicating that it was Suffolk County Courthouse.
Oh, they always do that.
Something like that. But that disturbs me.
You're lucky they shot in Boston. Half of the movies set in Boston or Chicago are shot in Toronto.
I understand that.
And what about Rumble in the Bronx? The Jackie Chan picture that was shot in Vancouver. So here we are in the Bronx with mountains in the background.
Maybe it's because they don't want to pay union wages.
It's cheaper in Canada. It is.
I know
everything is cheaper.
That's what I'm saying.
And the Canadian dollar is so weak.
But this film, as you looked out, The Verdict, looked out a window. You could see the Boston Common across the way from the bar, and there is no such animal.
Yeah, well, it's typical because they just assume that you're going to give them a little leeway if you know, and they figure that most people won't know.
Yeah, but the favorite part of that film was the speech to the jury, where Paul Newman is just sort of sitting there, and there's sort of a portrait. Not a soul moves as he makes his
one of his great performances. You know, in that book, Questions for the Movie Answer Man, there is a question and answer involving what was in his coffee cup in the last scene in the movie. Because, you know, he's an alcoholic in the movie, and at the end he's drinking out of a coffee cup. But some people feel that he was drinking whiskey out of the coffee cup. And other people feel it was coffee in the coffee cup. And I finally asked him, and he said, coffee, of course. So there was a little...
Well, the reason
people who believe it was coffee can't
The reason being that the phone was ringing, and she who had deserted him and played a spy during this film was trying to get him, and he knew it was her. So I think that many people would think he was having a little sauce.
I think there could be a discussion about it. but he was convinced it was coffee.
Well, I mean, after all, they're not going to serve him during the midst of the film. I don't think he takes it too well. Jewish drinkers don't do too well, you know what I mean?
He's done pretty well.
He's done very well, as a matter of fact. So what do you recommend? What should we see over the next, over the holiday season?
Over the holiday season, first of all, Anastasia is a good movie. And I think a lot of people feel if it's an animated feature and it's not made by Disney, it can't be that good.
It can't be that good.
And Anastasia is right there in the same ballpark as the recent Disney pictures. And I think it was very well made, a very interesting story, and a great villain, the Mad Monk Rasputin.
It doesn't have that the kind of animation that you see Saturday mornings?
No, it's fully animated. It's if you've got kids, that's a good choice.
What is your favorite animated full-length feature?
Of the recent ones?
No, of all time.
Of all time. Well, there's always Snow White, there's Fantasia, and there's Pinocchio.
What did I say the other day? I mentioned it's my favorite film of all time. It's because I've seen it 700 times. When I was an usher at the Flatbush Theater in Brooklyn, I saw Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
It's a great film.
And
there's a Japanese animated film called My Neighbor Totoro, if you have kids. You can rent it on video. You may never think of looking for it. My Neighbor Totoro, T-O-R-O, but it's good.
All Japanese people in it?
Yeah, but they speak
English. He with a
through
racist theme?
Through the miracle, well, actually, you can't... Japanese animation uses these kind of doll-like creatures with big eyes who could be of any race.
Yeah.
And so that's a good film. And Titanic is coming up. That's worth waiting for. That's a good film.
Do I get upset in Titanic? I mean,
the ship sinks.
I understand, but will I be upset?
I think you'll be more fascinated than upset, although there's some pretty sad stuff at the end. But the way that the movie is put together really fascinates you with its story of how this unsinkable ship sank.
There was a lady who was interviewed rather recently. She was the last remaining survivor.
Well, in the movie, they use a character like that. They use a character like that in the framing story. And then this movie, The Apostle, which we mentioned with Duvall, that's good, and Good Will Hunting is good.
Any bad ones?
I think the science fiction pictures this season can kind of... Starship Troopers and Alien Resurrection, you can kind of give those a pass.
How about The Jackal?
You can give that a pass. I was offended by the fact that they... At the end, they're obviously shooting for Hillary Clinton, and I think that's wrong. I think they could have gotten a generic First Lady if they had to shoot at a First Lady. They didn't have to really go after a look-alike for our actual First Lady. I think there are too many nuts out there for us to encourage that kind of thinking.
So Flubber's gone.
Flubber's, if you want to take the kids to a movie, take them to Anastasia, not Flubber.
Well, why don't you just go to another film while the kids are seeing Flubber?
Because they're your kids, and you respect them too much to want them to go to a bad movie. And if you take them to Anastasia, you'll probably enjoy it just as much as they do.
I understand that, but at the same time, Flubber is Flubber. I mean, it is Flubber.
It is a flub, that's for sure.
What's next for you and your partner?
Well, Siskel and I are going to continue to do the show once a week, and we enjoy doing that. We're really happy with our new time slot in Boston. Mm-hmm. And apart from that, my book comes out every year, and I keep reviewing new movies. I mean, as long as Hollywood is in business, we're in business.
Yeah, and I see Gene everywhere as well, doing things like you're doing on the outside.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
He writes for the Tribune, is that right?
Chicago Tribune, yes, but he doesn't write the full-length reviews. He writes the itty-bitty flicky-pickies, little summaries. I write the full-length review, Jerry.
Mm-hmm.
You want the full 800, 900, 1,000
See,
words.
I knew there was something between them. See, I'm kidding, of course, but the fact is that Gene does a lot of things. He's on CBS, and
he's on the CBS Morning News.
And I see him. Is he ad-libbing?
God only knows.
Are you ad-libbing?
Oh, when we do our show, we're ad-libbing when we talk to each other. Yes.
Yeah. But do you set up so you know the setup?
We know well when we read.
We're going to do these 4 films today.
Yeah, we know what the 4 films are, and we know what the introduction to the clips is going to be. But when we talk to each other, then it's ad-lib.
You have no idea.
No. We tried it in the old days. 22 years ago, when we started out, we used to make mental outlines of what we wanted to say. It never worked. It never worked. It only worked when we just talked to each other.
Well,
You know, you have a great film critic here in Boston, Jay Carr, Boston Globe. He's somebody I see every year at the Cannes Film Festival, and you're lucky to have him.
Why?
Why? Because he's good. I read him on the web.
Well, maybe... you
don't agree with him?
No, it's not a case of that at all. I've seen sometimes when I do agree with his position on films, and other times when I say he's crazy. I love that film.
I think it's great if you think a critic is crazy occasionally, just so long as you think he's interesting. I don't really care if I agree with a critic or not so much as whether or not he writes in a way that keeps my attention.
Roger, thank you very much. It's good to see you again.
Jerry, it's great to see you again.
It's only been... 40 or 50 or maybe 60 years? Is that all?
We were there at the birth, yes. Remember those big vacuum tubes that used to fill the whole
That's right.
closet? Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I remember Mrs. Paley. He used to come through the CBS studios, if you remember, used to be an old roller rink.
Was she the one with the vacuum cleaner?
She was the one with the vacuum cleaner and said, I wish she'd be here right now. The fact is that she... would not allow anybody to put anything on a desk after 6 o'clock. It was among the missing.
Yeah, well, I think she was having an affair with Marconi myself.
Thank you very much. A pleasure to have you.
So long.
Roger Ebert, ladies and gentlemen, from Siskel and Ebert on Channel 4, 10:30 Sunday mornings.